Hi, everybody, and good evening. Good evening here from California, sort of the day before. I hope I can read everything with ease. Um, I seem to be traveling around quite a bit and just want to keep our continuity going as much as possible. So I'm grateful for your presence. Just want to welcome those who are here already. And I won't be able to welcome everybody because people will join as we go along, But anyway, Alexandra and Antoinette and Clesia, Diane, Frederick, Yette, Joanne, John, Karen, Leo Watford, Lothar, Lynn, Marianne, Mariut, Martha, Myrna, Nicolaus, Olivia, Rebecca, Renee, Risto, Robin, Suzanne, Tuija, Victor, and here Brett and I are sort of upholding the staff part of all this. We are into the technique of indifference. We are into that which disperses the Maya. And it's really profound, because, sometimes these words can be used in a general sense, you might say. They indicate not just the specificity of Maya for the etheric level, glamour for the astral level, and illusion for the mental level, but each one of these words covers all three. So this is, this process that we've been going through, and, the book is profound, and it will take a lot of work on our part. This process was begun by Olivia, Hansen, Tuija, Robbins, and myself. And I know there are many groups in different parts of the world studying these matters. And if we all study together and apply what we know in a focused manner, we will be helping on the inside of life to dispel, dissipate, and disperse the veils, the obstacles, the inhibitory energies which prevent the truth from reaching our consciousness right here on the physical plane. So just to focus here a little bit, that we are all, we have quite a, strong European group at the moment. I think with these morning sessions, we will naturally have that. Because I'm out here on the West Coast, and so progressively it's 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the USA. So anyway, when it's not convenient for you to attend these seminars, they will be available to you as videos on the Makara website, and Brett gets them up there. Okay. So here we all are together in the various places we find ourselves, the area of Europe and the Americas and Australia, New Zealand. And we're offering ourselves as a group to work subjectively at a time when this subjective work is sorely needed. And we trust in the formulas Master DK has given us. We know the power of the creative imagination, and we know the power of our willingness to work together to clear away the obstructions to the registration of that which is the good, the beautiful, and the true. And with consistency, as much as we can master, although the conference is coming up now, and that will necessitate a little hiatus in our work while the conference is on, but you can participate in the conference via video with that kind of regularity, as much as we can manage. We will continue to participate in the subjective solution of apparently objective problems. And we will work to overcome the effects of the etheric veil of separation, the veil of distortion, and the veil of impulsion. And you will recognize those words as I descend from the mental through the emotional to the etheric plane. Now we're going to follow our usual method, where we cover some of the academic work and then apply it in our meditation. But after a bit of the academic work, we'll have the opportunity for statements, questions, answers, comments, things of that nature. So we're really beginning here with the technique of indifference, which relates to the dispersion of Maya. We're not rushing through the book at all. We want to absorb as best we can. Actually, this book was written over a period, at least from 1931 onwards. They came out as lesson sets for those who were in the various groups. And he did continue, and these sets were gathered together in the form of various books, whether for glamour or healing or education, And maybe there'll be a chance, who knows, for Master Dite to continue in the next installment to expand the seed group project, which has a duration of some 275 years, of which maybe only not even 100 has elapsed. So these will be important foci of hierarchical energy. And, with the right intent, over the centuries to come, we can be participating in this esoteric work. Let's just, kind of begin thinking together here on the technique of indifference. We talked a bit, last time when we were together on the just the summary of the idea of what illusion is, the mode whereby limited understanding, of which we are all guilty, of course, and material knowledge interpret truth, veiling and hiding it behind a cloud of thought forms. There are a number of good definitions of illusion, and this is one of them. And glamour, in its turn, veils and hides the truth behind the fogs and mists of feeling and emotional reaction. We've seen people carried away by their blinded desires or blinding desires, and maybe we have some experience of that ourselves. We come now to a brief study of the third aspect of illusion, and notice how he's generalizing here. So the idea of illusion is covering all three of the specific types of distortion or misrepresentation. It's covering normal illusion of the mental plane, glamour, and Maya. But he uses the blanket term illusion, as is done in the writings of the older authors, and they use the term Maya similarly. Maybe glamour is a term a little less used in a generalizable way, but even DK does use it to generalize as well. So anyway, the world illusion, in a way the universe itself is the great illusion, and that's a startling thought, but we can go through that sometime when compared with absolute reality. So we come to a brief study of the third aspect of illusion, to which we give the name Maya, and to the technique which can overcome it. And we will deal next with the technique of indifference. We hear so much about divine indifference, and this technique is helping us induce that. This is the particular technique. It's not the technique of the presence. It's not the technique of light, dealing with the first two phases of dispelling illusion and dissipating glamour. It's the technique of indifference, which is concerned with the distribution of soul force upon the physical plane, because it's so often blocked by these various veils that I listed before. The veil of separation, distortion, and impulsion. You can get an idea what that means, impulsion, chaotic energy, distortion, exaggeration, minimization, separation. It's what the concrete mind does, fragmenting all the things that are essentially in a unity. So it's concerned here with the distribution of soul force upon the physical plane via the etheric plane, leading to inspiration, what can we call it? No, that's wrong. Sorry, just had a little, make that correct. Yeah, it's the breathing in of divinity, of divine energies, of a God. Enthusiasm and inspiration, very closely related. And this will be related to the science of the breath. The breath is the life, and we will study that in the weeks to come. Whether we have to have a break for the conference, we will study it in sequence, the science of the breath. The breath is the life. So, the inspired life, it's kind of interesting. When we are talking about the technique of fusion of the found in esoteric psychology, we do have, interestingly enough, the third ray type being fed by a tremendous power of the first ray experiences inspiration. And otherwise there's illumination, which the first ray type experiences, and imagination, which the second ray type experiences. Kind of a ring around a rosy, which is very interesting to consider when studying the technique of fusion. In our work with the Advancing Seven-Ray Seminar at the conference, we gave attention, I think last year, to the technique of fusion. And this year, we'll be giving attention to the work with the Antakarana, via which inspiration is achieved, along 7 different ray lines of building, projecting, receiving, and so forth. I think it'll be very interesting, and I hope you can attend in person or via our streaming. What then is Maya, he asks. And maybe he's being a little more specific here. This, my brother, is not easy to define, because it is related to the form-building activity of the planetary logos himself. And let's remember the dense, dense physical body of the planetary logos includes the lower mental body, lower mental vehicle, the astral body, and the etheric physical vehicle. Okay. So in other words, all of our 18 lower subplanes are actually areas in which the planetary logos is involved in form building. You know, our own dense physical vehicle really only consists of the 3 lower subplanes, gaseous, liquid, and solid. But if you look at the planetary logos, that gaseous and liquid and solid state of energy or force is found on the 18 lower subplanes. Okay, so it's the form-building activity. Maya is related to that. However, a consideration of the analogy existing between the microcosm and the macrocosm may somewhat help in our understanding. So, the soul creates a threefold expression in the 3 worlds of human living, those are the 18 lower subplanes. This is an occult truism. We're all familiar with the idea, right? Whether we understand the implications is another matter. The outer form, the dual physical body, dense and vital or etheric, is produced, created, motivated, energized, and conditioned by certain energies and forces, some high, some low, emanating from those levels whereon the soul has, rightly or wrongly, engineered a reaction of identification. So what's he saying here? According to the focus of identification of the soul in incarnation, so will be the forces carried, or I should include energies and or forces, but we'll just say, energies or forces carried by the etheric body. So if I'm identified, let's see, maybe that's it. If I'm identified emotionally, if I believe that my nature is what occurs on the astral emotional plane, those are going to be the energies that are going to be carried by the etheric body. Or if I'm really densely physically identified, as some still are today, then those energies, the lowest ones, will penetrate into the etheric body. Or it could be the mind, it could be the soul, it could be the spiritual triad, depending upon my point of tension. So he tells us to note this phrase, the soul, especially the soul in incarnation, has engineered a reaction of identification. And basically what we have to learn to do to achieve divine indifference really, is to disidentify. with those factors in the lower world with which we are habitually identified because we have not freed ourselves yet from that identification. So note this phrase, my brother, engineered a reaction of identification. These make the man what he is. They give him his temperament, profession, and quality upon the physical plane. They make him negative or positive to various types of impacting energy. They give him his character and make him what he appears to be to others. Of course, we're always deluded when we think we're seeing the real being. We're seeing the layers that obscure the reality. They produce his coloring, that's quality, of course, his capacities and his personality. So these levels of identificatory reaction produce all these familiar things, and they produce that which we outwardly seem to be. And if we're going to describe people, we oftentimes think in these terms. Rarely can we penetrate into the nature of the being's consciousness, his soul, and see what that being is behind all these things that are here described. Because the consciousness immersed in the personality mistakenly identifies itself with what it experiences on these 18 lower subplanes. And it takes a long time. It takes millions of years to abstract ourselves and disidentify from what we see in an obvious manner, what we see of ourselves. With all of these, I guess it's so good what he says, temperament, profession, quality on the physical plane, negativity or positivity to the energies impacting character, appearance, coloring, all that. Maybe we should, really think about those things. Because that's how we usually think of people when we're thinking about who they are. All these things are what come to our mind particularly. With all these, the average man identifies himself. He believes himself to be the form. Well, that's the big problem. That is the great misidentification, the great mistake bewildering us for ages. He believes himself to be the form, the medium through which he attempts to express his desires and his ideas. We look in the mirror and we think, well, there I am, That's who I am. And, maybe some of you have had the experience, I've tried this, kind of an exercise. I look at the form in the mirror and I just get behind it. I don't allow myself to think this is I. I find the I somewhere else, more interior to the image. I find that I as a intangible something, which is yet real. Practice it and see if you can. You could be looking in the mirror or the water 10 million years ago. The observer is the same and the image is different. And we have to really be able to do that so as to split ourselves from the thing which we most habitually identify as ourselves. So he believes himself to be the form, the medium through which he attempts to express his desires and his ideas. That's what it is. It's an instrument of expression. The complete identification with the transient creation and with the outer appearance is Maya. This is another one of those really good definitions, and, they should be collected and understood. let's see, there it is. This complete identification with the transient, passing, aggregation, congestion in space and time, this complete identification with the transient creation and with the outer appearance is Maya. So in that respect, as we disidentify ourselves not only from the form, but gradually from the desires and emotions and the many, many thoughts, and even from the soul body, we are overcoming higher and higher forms of Maya. It must be remembered that the individual Maya is a fractional part of the world of energies and forces which constitute the life expression of the planetary logos. There is the world Maya, of course, but the planetary logos is free of that, essentially. The life expression of the planetary logos which condition our outer planetary life and make our planet what it appears to be to the other planets. That suggests that, when we are looking at the other planets, we only see what appears to be and not the reality. It's so hard to see the reality and not be fooled by the appearance. And remember DK's famous triplicity: life, quality, and appearance, and they are associated with the first, second, and third rays. So we're basically dealing here specifically with a third ray function, which is Maya, although it can be used, as I said, in a general sense. And if we're going to be taken in by appearance, we are really victims of the Maya. So just think in your life, how much has appearance, per se, affected your consciousness, your thinking, your decisions? How much have we been taken in by the appearance of things and not the reality of things? Well, it's something to review, and I'm sure we outgrow it as we go, maybe when we're younger, we're taken in by appearance, but gradually we understand that something far more real is underlying this appearance, and we're no longer fooled or bewildered. We're no longer led astray by the unreal. So lead us from darkness to light, from the unreal to the real. And it takes a lot of disidentification, a lot of detachment, a lot of standing back to begin to sense the reality behind the appearance. Sounds so simple, It sounds like, oh yeah, this is what occultism is all about. But it's got to be practiced, otherwise we're taken in by what we see, what we sense. The five lower senses obscure the reality. Well, really, when you go all the way up, even though the subtler senses reveal more and more of the qualities of divinity, they are still obscurations until we find pure being itself. The difference between man, the microcosm, and the planetary logos, the Lord of the world. Notice how he interchangeably uses the term Lord of the world and planetary logos. It's as if he tries to help us realize that Sanat Kumara is the planetary logos in extension. Sanat Kumara is an emanation of the planetary logos. He is called the Lord of the world, and the planetary logos who is not in extension or emanation is the monadic aspect of the planetary logos. Of course, he is extended into increasing depth of prakriti, of matter, but it's also possible to reach that level in which the planetary logos is exactly what it is and not in extension. And one of the things we come to understand is that while Sanat Kumara, as an emanation of the planetary logos, may administer the third, fourth, and fifth initiation, Sanat Kumara per se does not administer the sixth and the seventh. An unknown being, which is a greater emanation of the planetary logos, administers the sixth initiation, and the planetary logos himself, perhaps in an unextended manner, administers the seventh initiation. So let's just say that although it's a very subtle subject, the understanding of emanation is very important to grasp the reality of things. And I think when you look at the Buddhist tankas and art, we see that factor of emanation operating all the time. So we have to not be childish about what it means, but try to really sense the subtlety of the emanative process and how it allows the great being to go forth into minutiae and still return and be itself fully. Anyway, the Lord of the world is not identified with the Maya he has created, or, well, created, in a way become. Through the power of his own thought, he has extended himself into the lower vibratory worlds. So we can call it creation, but becoming as well. So let us also use the word become. So he's not identified with this. And we human beings, we really are. And which has its purpose in eventually bringing about the release of the prisoners of the planet. The many unconscious, non-self-conscious lives who have no choice but to go along with certain habitual types of activities which are guided by still higher beings. So his extension, the planetary logos' extension into the Maya, is for the purpose of releasing the prisoners of the planet, but he manages to stay detached and we don't. At least until we really begin to wake up and we learn what detachment is all about. To that Maya, and now I guess he's using a capital M here, his extension into the lower worlds, his creation, his projected, objectified thought form, to that Maya, he is supremely indifferent. Now you see how divine indifference is coming in here, right? Supremely indifferent, as if it's not even a reality. Well, it is a creation, and it serves its purpose. But he certainly doesn't make the mistake of thinking that he is what he has created. He is not what he has created, and he is not what he has apparently become. His real essence is something else. To that Maya, he is supremely indifferent, and it is this divine indifference which has led to the great theological illusion of an anthropomorphic deity, one who, I'll capitalize it, one who is remote, who has an inscrutable will and is somehow separated from his creation. He's not really separated from his creation at all, but apparently, to invoke an intervention of the will of God is a pretty, it has to be a pretty dramatic need present. Like we're told, something that always amazes me, I've mentioned it before, that the solar logos, not just the planetary logos, but the solar logos almost intervened in the third year of World War I. It must have had solar systemic implications, the way things were going, And those interventions are very rare. And DK says, okay, watch out now. You're playing with the possibility of a religious war here, and Shambhala will be forced to intervene, which it has never really done before. So, the idea of the remote anthropomorphic deity is very much in the minds of men, and the whole idea of God immanent is not so well understood. So there is an indifference of the great being, a divine indifference, which has led to the theological illusion. Now, I guess this is really talking about how God transcendent is viewed without its immanence, and to the belief in the East that our planet is but the background or the plaything of the gods. Well, in a way, maybe that's more true than the theological illusion of a remote anthropomorphic deity. In other words, we're told that even the master creates or regards time and space as his playthings. It is this cosmic indifference which has led to the human glamour concerning the inscrutable will of God, about which DK actually talks because we can't really penetrate it. But along with that inscrutable will, which is, she would say, somewhat fathomable as we ascend in our understanding, along with that comes the affirmation that God is far away and not immanent in every creature and in every atom of which creatures are made. And this is a very severe illusion, I'll call it that, illusion, because one can dismiss and not value the forms which are not one's own. And so it's against the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's found in all the great world religions. But when we believe that these other forms are not divine and are not instances of the permeation of God, then, we can just treat them any way we like. And man's inhumanity to man arises there because we don't realize the actual divinity of the forms which are presented to our consciousness, divine because God is immanent in them. So the great discovery that we have to make is about the immanence of God, the planetary logos. Let's call God that for the moment, even though this planetary logos is himself supremely indifferent to his to that which he has created, which does not mean he does not treat it with compassion so that his purpose can be compassionately realized. Let's realize we've got a second-ray soul deity in our planetary logos, and compassion is a very strong thing and getting stronger all the time as the soul of our planetary logos emerges. So we have to contain somehow these apparent contradictions, that although God, our planetary logos, is not identified with the Maya he has created, he treats it compassionately in order to fulfill his purpose, and he invests himself as a pervasion of every lesser being he has through emanation become. So the God of our planet underlies every being through immanence, even though he knows it's not the reality. It serves a purpose, a redemptive purpose of lifting those forms up. These are some aspects of the glamours and illusions. They're rife in the theological field, right? These are some aspects of the glamours and illusions which must be dispelled, related to illusion, and dissipated, related to glamour. And in the process, discovery will be made that the form is only the Maya and can be disregarded, especially the dense physical form. Now, this is interesting. It can be disregarded, and yet it has to be respected. And these are some of the, well, apparent contradictions of the occult path. Take care of your body. We're always told. My old teacher used to tell me, take care of your body. It's going to be a long time before you get another one. I was a young man, and, I listened, as young people tend to listen, but the wisdom of that is there. It's not a principle. It's an aggregation upon that which is a principle, which is namely the principle of the etheric body. But we can consider it ultimately in terms of sacrifice for the sake of the plan. We can consider it expendable. And that's, as we learn sacrifice towards the fourth initiation, we will learn the expendability of that which is not a principle. So the form is only Maya. And you know how it is these days. I don't know. I go to a lot of airports. You walk through the airport, everything is catering to the dense physical form, as desire is attached to that dense physical form. It's as if it's the most real thing in the world, and yet it's the most unreal thing, and yet it has to be wisely preserved so that it can be a medium of expression for the true principle. See, all these contradictions, apparent contradictions, have to be resolved. So these are some of the aspects of the glamours and illusions, so many of them clustered around theology and religious thought, which have to be dispelled and dissipated. We have to disregard, in one way, that which is not a principle and yet respect it. Discovery will be made that form is only Maya and can be disregarded. That means keep our eyes off it in a way, keep our eyes upon the true principles, and then automatically, because a regard is a look with the eye, then automatically it will be properly used. That forces can be organized and directed by energy. That's our organization of the world, so we're no longer in the veil of chaotic impulsion. And that the world of thought, the field of sentient consciousness, and the playground of the energies, and see how he's gone 1, 2, 3? The mind, the world of thought, the field of sentient consciousness, the astral body, the playground of the energies, the etheric body, are something apart from the thinker. The thinker is the soul. Something apart from the one who feels, and from the actor and player of the many parts which the soul undertakes to play. So, we have to disidentify before we find the one which we are. And look, behind the whole universe is the supreme actor, the supreme player, the supreme dancer, if you will. We can, there's only one being here. We can't ever separate ourselves from that one being. We are it. And if we don't seem to be it, it's because our consciousness is so terribly limited at this time that we are caught identifying with a tiny ring pass knot, and have not learned, as the Christ has learned, to penetrate, whether via Neptune, let us say, to go through that ring pass knot and begin identifying with a much larger picture until the day comes, the universal day be with us, when we realize an absolute fullness. And it seems, it's so far away in terms of time, but this repeats itself forever, that we are the universal monad. Not just the monad, as we talk about ourselves on the monadic plane, a cell within the planetary logos and all that. But in fact, once all of the ring pass knots are broken, once we cease identifying with the small picture and expand into the ever larger picture, we will learn that we are the universal monad. Well, even our planetary logos or solar logos is not close to that realization, but we have to understand the path ahead. Well, this is really interesting stuff. I would like to, I'm afraid, that when I thought I would be going this far, I cannot and will not go that far. I wanted to go up to the breath is the life, but I'm going to have to content myself with just a little bit of this very interesting material. So, but I tell you what, I will read one more paragraph, if that's okay with you. So this is probably 243 or something like that. Or I'm not even sure. Well, let's just see what it is. The disciple learns, and we are all trying to be disciples, right? The disciple learns to know himself to be above everything else whilst in incarnation. Here comes a first ray word, the director of forces. These he directs from the, not the attitude, but the altitude of the divine observer and through the attainment of detachment. You know how it goes, discipline for the physical body, dispassion for the emotional body, discrimination for the mental body, decentralization for the personality, and finally, detachment for the soul, and yet all of it is detachment in a way. So, the divine observer is finally the monad, finally the one being, and we have to learn to identify ourselves as being if we're going to be truly detached. But, are we really the director of forces, or are we, as it says in esoteric astrology, driven up and down the land without being able to chart our own course through the right use of the will? We hope in our coming conference, which is entitled The Will and the Way, to help clarify the whole question of the will and strengthen and refine that will in those who pay attention to what's going on, the attendees and those who think with us on these subjects. So these are things, he says, which I've often told you before. These truths are for you only the occult platitudes of occultism. That means we really haven't made them real for ourselves. Just something we repeat. We know it's true, but we don't know it's true, if you know what I mean. And yet, if you could but grasp the full significance of detachment, the Buddha, his whole teaching is about detachment. The full significance of detachment, and stand serene as the observing director. So we are the I and the will simultaneously. There would be, and this sounds good, doesn't it? No more waste motion, no more mistaken moves, and no more false interpretations, no wandering down the bypaths of daily living. They don't lead anywhere, right? No seeing others through distorted and prejudiced vision, and above all, no misuse of force. Maya, the misuse of force. So this is another wonderful area describing what we would achieve if we could only grasp the full significance of detachment, which means finding ourselves as being, following out the attitude of the observer until we find ourselves as pure being, looking on and yet underlying all. We are God transcendent, we are God immanent. We are the monad transcendent, we are the monad immanent. It's a big job, and it's going to take us some lives to accomplish these things. Okay, friends, so this will be, as far as I go right now, and probably far enough. Yes. And we'll continue now. I really haven't done my homework here. I don't know if we continue on the, let's see, add 7 on the 11th of April, or whether we, no, excuse me, 11th, it would be the 17th of April. I'm not sure whether we, maybe Joe or Brett or BL, you can tell me, or whether that's already into our period when the conference is coming. But let's just say beginning BGN of number 41 from this point, and I suppose...
no, we'll continue after the conference.
It's after the conference, okay. Very good. So this is just up to 243. So we don't really continue. The conference is the main thing going on now. Continuing after the conference, and we'll be sending out, reminders about that. We have time. We can't rush it. There is no rush, no hurry, says the Tibetan, and yet there is no time to lose. So, conference is extremely demanding and, illuminating, I think, and we've got to stick to doing that in the right way. Now, so this is 243. Are there any thoughts, statements, questions relating to Maya, indifference, detachment, observation, divine indifference, anything like that, or that which you have, let's say, been thinking about that you would like to perhaps mention, discuss, etc., etc.? Yeah.
Michael?
Yes, Brett.
We have a question from Rebecca.
Yes. Okay. Let's see where we are here. Maybe if I can get it up for everybody to see, it'll be better. Okay. I think.
Well, they can't see yours.
Oh, but can they see this?
They can see they can see their individual one if they look in the questions.
Okay. And what I just put into the middle of my screen is not seen. Is that correct?
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay, well then I'll try to read slowly. I have some trouble with understanding that the body is not a principle. Well, the dense physical body is not. It was cultivated by great intelligence in the previous solar system, and it is not the focus of the planetary logos or the solar logos in this particular soul-centered system. So what has been given a lot of attention in the past, and which has been brought to a condition of sufficiency, no longer receives the attention of the greater being, but is an automaticism. And if we concentrate on the areas where the higher intelligence is now focusing, the body will take care of itself wisely. So it's a question of the focus of the greater being. Maybe it's because you see I have 4 planets in Taurus. Well, I really understand the whole Taurus thing and how physical it can be, but remember too that the light of the monad is directly related to Taurus, and it is the mother of illumination. And if we were going to destroy form and yield light, Taurus would be involved here because it is the great sea of light and illumination. So, frankly, it's an easy thing to fall into. I understand that. I have something there too. And it's easy to consider Taurus from the more physical point of view, and rarely, unless in esoteric astrology, is Taurus really considered related to the light. But we have to begin cultivating that point of view. I've known people who are really good astrologers. They study the book, but they don't make the transference of what they learn in the book to the way they think about astrology and practice astrology. There's still a hiatus between them. And, I this year in my solar return, I have Taurus rising. Well, almost instinctively, I began to think about material aspects. But in fact, I have to concentrate on the light value of form. And I suggest that we redirect our consciousness towards the deeper esoteric meaning of it, and just turn to page 332 and 333 of Esoteric Astrology, and it'll illustrate these ideas. Matter of fact, I'm just going to do it. I'll show you what I mean. Esoteric. Okay, and okay. Let's see if maybe I better do this in a way that doesn't make what I have in front of me disappear. Otherwise, I won't be able to continue dealing with your question. But okay, so Esoteric Astrology, and I'm going to go to page 332, and what I'm going to see here is light. Selfish desire, the light of earth, and that's the very thing, condensed light. Aspiration then follows the light of love, and for the disciple initiate, the light of life itself, and it's going to relate to Shambhala. So let's reframe our thinking about Taurus so we think of it as much in terms of light as we normally do in terms of substance. Okay, so could Rebecca Frith, okay, et cetera. Could you expand a bit more on the body not being a principle, or try to do that? What is an example of a principle? It is a particular quality or mode of energy or apprehension upon which the greater being is now focusing for the sake of development. According to the plan, there should be another webinar tomorrow, and that's yet okay. Actually, there isn't. Maybe Brett can help me explain that when we get to that point. I think there were some mistakes made. There will be a webinar. There'll be a broadcast tomorrow, and it will be on the Soul of Nations too. You will be giving that, but not a webinar per se. I think a mistake was made. Glamour webinar is only once a week. But anyway, I went on yet into what you had said. So that's it, Rebecca, as I see it. And if you will go into a treatise on cosmic fire, right around page 259, and up, then another 10, 11, 12 pages, you will see all the different ways that DK considers what are principles. It all has to do with the perspective that we're taking and what type of being is involved. So the higher the being, the greater the principles, the greater the points of concentration upon which that being is focused. So, look, the body has been built. It's functioning automatically, properly. In Lemuria, this was further advanced through a process of initiation which was very conscious in terms of manipulating physical energies. And now it's just an automaticism. And our job is to concentrate a lot more on the etheric body and allow the organization we can achieve relative to the etheric body to take care of the functioning of the dense physical. That's what I can say for the moment. Okay, so Brett has basically said over here that we're going to. There were a few mistakes there, and we doubled up, and so we do not have a repetition of Glamour tomorrow. And when you look ahead, you're going to see that. But Brett is going to delete them if they haven't been deleted already, and then everything will reflect properly. Okay. Now, let's see what else we've got. Other thoughts or questions? And I've got to say this, Rebecca. Think of it. Our planetary logos, in a way, is not concentrating upon these lower 18 subplanes at all. This is his dense physical body. It's been brought to a certain condition where he no longer needs to focus there but on that which is really a principle. And as far as our solar logos is concerned, even the world of the soul is not considered a principle. The lower 21 subplanes are part of the solar logos' dense physical body. And if we're going to go, we could just keep going to greater and greater beings, and we discovered that the whole cosmic physical plane, from the perspective of a still greater being, is not a principle. So it has to do with focus of a particular type of entity. Brett, you have something? Let's see, GP here.
Yes, GP has their hand up.
Okay, very good. Okay, GP, go ahead. Let's see if I can find this. Can you speak? Because it looks like you want to speak. Just make sure because we've unmuted you, you're good to go. And if you have a question or a thought, just offer it now. Make sure your volume is turned up enough so we can hear you. Could be a mistaken hand raised, or could be, sometimes mastering these technicalities, it gets a little bit onerous, but okay. Okay, well, when you have something to say, GP, just come back or write it out or whatever, and we'll be happy to consider it. Okay, Suzanne, looks like you got something there. The technique of acting as if can be a useful tool as we attempt to identify with more refined levels of being. Absolutely. Acting as if involves the creative imagination, and the creative imagination is in resonance with the state we wish to achieve. So that when that resonance is sufficient, it is no longer imagination. The state we wish to achieve becomes tangible and real to us. It's like working with symbols. You start with a symbol, and it's your way into the reality. You start with a creative imagination, and it resonates to that of which the imagination is the representation. So, we don't fool ourselves. We act as if, and we know we're acting as if, and we never forget that. At the same time, we see what happens within our psyche when we try that. So DK has well advised us on that matter of acting as if. Okay. Right, Suzanne. Okay, who else? Anybody? Your thoughts, your questions, whatever might come to you. Look, it takes a long time. Occultism takes a long time. You can only imagine the thousands and thousands of years that someone like Master DK has studied, meditated, pondered in a manner in which we are only now learning to do. We are only now learning to do it. So we must be extremely patient in terms of what we consider time to be. And, there's just no way of running through the door of the temple. The temple guards against such things, and you won't make it. You know what I mean? You have to learn to knock. We all have to learn how to knock appropriately for the temple door to open, and that means to follow Rule 2 and Rule 3 for candidates for initiation. We have to prepare ourselves, every vehicle, until our vehicle resonates with that which is behind the electrical barrier, which we call the door. So, I'm hoping that we all have plenty of patience here and realize that when you're dealing with something of the profundity of Master DK, it's going to take a lot of what we call human time, but we will achieve the goal. We will achieve the goal. Okay, I'm just looking here for anybody else who would like to ask, comment, say something, I see quite a few of you, attending regularly. And I'm very grateful for that. And, a rhythmic consistency in the matter of studying these profound matters is of great importance. You can pick up the books now and then, they're very interesting, etc., but the only way to get a true assimilation of the depth of the teaching is to be rhythmic about it. And this is where the seventh ray comes in, rhythmic, deep, and we sacrifice our time to do this. But as Master Moria said, and I've often stated, when have you ever become less through sacrifice? So there's a lot worse ways to spend our time than rhythmically, consistently, deeply working with this material, even if it takes this life and the next life and the next life. It's okay. We'll get there. Okay, Anne. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, Anne. So, could we say that it's about how deep the identification is that decides what is an aggregate? Well, that's that Buddhist term, all of the lesser emanations tend to come together, and on the physical plane, these tiny emanations are called aggregations. And we notice, if we have real depth of identification, that many things that we thought were realities were simply a coming together of forms. And then we see through that, and we pull away from sensing that that is a reality, and we find something still more subtle. So let's be clear, it's not, we have to be careful of having a very deep identification with form, because that's the very thing that misleads us. But if we have an ever detaching disidentification with form, it counts for an identification with ever deeper layers of observation and deeper layers of being. And then we'll look out on a world which seems extremely aggregated, because we'll be identified with something that is non-aggregative. Now, the boundless immutable principle, with the very first principle of the secret doctrine we're speaking of, there's a boundless immutable principle. Well, if it's immutable, then aggregation is impossible, meaning it cannot be divided, it cannot be separated, and only when separation and number appear is aggregation possible. So we slip into what Blavatsky calls no number. No number. From no number comes number. The deep reality of being is no number. And only by this unfathomable process of apparent self-division, is there the possibility of aggregation. So I would say, kind of an answer to your question, go ever deeper into that which is seamless, that which is undivided, that which is unfragmented, that which verges upon no number and can never be anything other than it is, and then everything is going to seem like an aggregate. As a matter of fact, in occult chemistry and the book, which maybe explains it in a simpler way, First Principles of Theosophy by Jinara Jadasa, and occult chemistry, Besant and Leadbeater, they find the tiniest unit which can possibly aggregate on the physical plane, the cosmic physical plane. And what do they call that? The bubble in the koilon. Koilon. A bubble in a koilon. It's just the tiniest possible unit on the cosmic physical plane. And everything you find on the cosmic physical plane is made of these aggregations of the bubbles on the koilon, bubbles of the koilon. And, every atom has so many bubbles in the koilon. And the denser the atom, the bigger the atom, the more bubbles and so forth. But what is not known, at least I don't know it, if DK says of himself, I haven't been to the cosmic astral plane, I don't know how we can speculate, but the cosmic physical plane has these tiny units which form all the aggregations. Now, do those units disappear on the cosmic astral, cosmic mental, and so forth, or do they become ever tinier? This is the big question, because in that case, everything in the universe except being itself will be considered an aggregation. So let's deepen our identification with being. That's the sum of what I just have said here. Deepen our identification with being, deepen our disidentification with form, which is made of aggregations. Okay. That's a profound question. Okay. All right, friends. Well, it looks like we don't have anything else that we need to ask or discuss right now. Brett, do you see anything else?
Nothing.
Okay, I think
yet.
Nothing yet. Nothing yet. Okay, all right. Okay, friends. Well, let's. It is a little bit after 9. Well, here it is. 9 p.m. anyway. Or no, 11. 11. What am I talking about? 11:11. So if there are no more comments right now, we're working on the glamour of materialism. It is, it really fits with what we're studying, because Maya is that which renders the consciousness into a state of materialism. It's kind of a subjugation, not only first to the lower 5 senses, yes, but then it's a subjugation to anything that is found in the lower 3 worlds, the lower 18 subplanes, and even, as it's proved, that the causal body and the egoic lotus are from a certain perspective, a Maya. So materialism is identification of being with the object which being perceives. Now, if being perceives itself, it is no longer in the Maya. But if being perceives other things, apparently other things, as objects, then in fact, being is subject to Maya. So we are all, on one level or another, subject to Maya, or the great illusion, and DK tells us that even up to the 9th initiation, there's a whole issue there about illusion, and we think we're overcoming it at the 3rd degree, but we're not. Not even at the 6th degree, and just at the 9th degree, and who knows what other forms of illusion may exist, based upon aggregation, let us say. So we're dealing with materialism. It's the tendency to take what the senses reveal as reality. Now, it can be very dense and gross, and it can be the lower 5 senses, but there's a lot of things, There's this book, I never really read it, but I thought the title was interesting, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. There's, for some people, heaven or hell is a very literal place with very definite forms and very material. And that is a form of spiritual materialism. There is materialism on the subtle planes, but okay, when we think our thought forms are real, that's materialism too, but let's not worry about that, because that's not the kind of materialism that is so much thwarting the spiritual efforts of people right now. It's It's believing in the reality of what the five lower senses actually reveal. And then, in other words, we just take the dense physical plane for reality, and we take that which is not a principle for a reality, and it's not. It's what DK calls a congestion in space. It's a congestion which is an aggregation, and it's not a reality at all. It's just going to fall apart. It's only held together by that which is principle, namely the etheric nature. But, we can keep on raising the bar. And every time we look at one of the senses as they are elevated, even though they reveal wonderful things, they are still not the ultimate reality. So materialism can become ever more refined. And maybe it's impossible to perceive on the cosmic physical plane without being guilty of some form of materialism. It might be very, very refined, but materialism nonetheless. But the kind of materialism we're talking about now is the gross materialism which captivates the consciousness of so many selfish people in the world who don't want to share the things by which people live, They don't want to share the objects, the food, the money, the things that are necessities of life on the dense physical plane. And that's what we have to overcome, because they've added these material objects to their sense of selfhood, to their ego. Their ego is invested in the material revelations. They don't want to sacrifice their ego. They don't know how. And so they accumulate around themselves that which appears to reinforce the ego. And that means a terrible distribution of necessities of life. Selfishness reigns. Many people starve. Other people have a glut. It's a real, real problem. It comes, of course, from misidentification. But let's just attack it as materialism. Okay. So, this is our familiar form. Excuse me. So we are working together. In just a few moments of silence as we feel ourselves energized as one subjective group. We are subject or receptive to the energies we must use in dissipating this very third-rate glamour, in a way, correlating with the third-rate personality of the planetary logos, the glamour of materialism to which we are all subject in some way or other, just because we are beings on the cosmic physical plane. So now we're going to use our protective formula, because we don't want to be proud and say we don't need it. We do need it. And we make that cross, forehead, chest, left eye, right eye, and we use this formula as we do so. He calls it the sign of the cross of divinity. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. Of course, we use our creative imagination as we do this. And we imagine our immunity to the dark forces with which we have to deal because of the light in which we stand. I am the light of the world, said both the Buddha and the Christ. Now we focus the light of the personality, really. It's the light of matter, especially the etheric physical light, the dark light of the dense physical, and the etheric light. We call that the light of matter and the light of mind. And we draw the vital etheric physical light of matter up into the mental sphere, and there it meets with this light of mind, which can give us analysis, understanding, seeing how things work. So on the plane of mind, the blending of the light of matter and the light of mind. And then we meditate on soul contact, and we try to recognize, however we imagine it or feel it, try to imagine soul light. That light is always with us, but, do we really attune with it? Then we, however we feel or imagine or sense that soul light, we bring it down and we fuse it, soul light, with the two lesser lights. We bring it down onto the plane of mind, imaginatively fusing the three lights. So the vital light of matter, the light of the lower mind, and the light of the soul all meeting on the plane of mind. And this is a mind held steady in the light of the soul. The three are one. Then we're going to say together, the following, followed by the sacred word. The light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. And ultimately, the light of day is the light of the intuition, which we as human monads have a special connection with. So first the triple light, and then eventually the full light of day. And then our formula. And as the words of our formula are sounded, we visualize the great searchlight that we are creating, sending out onto the astral plane, that beam of triple as one group light, the searchlight, turning the light upon the astral plane and the glamours there found, the dark clouds, the mists, the veils, the distortions, our beam of effective triple light, which we will strengthen by the will, is turned into its objective upon the astral plane. Not a plane of clarity, no. A plane of grayness, obscurity, blurred forms. It's an unreality made of the matter of that plane. It's how humanity has used its thought and imagination and its desire. It's not real. The forms are not real. They have to be dissipated. So, this formula we say together as we think of the effectiveness of our beam upon the astral plane. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light, we work and turn the darkness into day. Our beam is strong. It extends into the darkness of the astral plane, and we strengthen it with the spiritual will, which we know comes from the monad and the atmic plane and from the soul. Our beam is strengthened by spiritual will. which we all need to cultivate, spiritual will. And as we call for this will, because we are willing, the will descends, we use the following mantra. Call for the spiritual will to strengthen our beam so that it becomes a true weapon of light in the swirling, deluding darkness of the astral plane. With power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. And now we work particularly with the words of power. And with our creative imagination, as we sound these words of power, we visualize our beam of light penetrating into the glamour and producing its weakening and its dissipation. The words of power. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of materialism. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life or vitality behind this glamour. And now, with our beam doing its work, will-inspired beam, with our thoughtful understanding, operating, realizing what materialism has done and is doing to wreck the world, as DK tells us, we will have our 5 minutes of silence, and this work will be seen proceeding. The prevention of the appearance, the negation of the quality, the destruction of the life. And you see it's a kind of a Ray 3-2-1 thing that he's given us. So, 5 minutes in which the work proceeds with intensity of purpose. And we operate now in that way. So it's not the form itself, but the sea of light from which the form emerges. It's the etheric matrix, which is the reality, more so than the dense physical appearance which the lower senses register. All forms veil and hide the light, and are but externalizations of the one infinite being. And when we sense the light which pervades the form and has been the author of its appearance, then we are slipping away from the grossest form of Maya. We're no longer taken in strictly by the appearance of things. But move through light, through quality, and eventually into life itself. And the heavier forms of Maya, which direct our energies and forces towards unworthy goals, those things disappear. And so we're striking a blow against the glamour that makes us think appearance is reality. The glamour of materialism. And together then we withdraw our beam from the astral plane. We bring it back to the plane of mind. The triple light is one. And there we imagine that the light is turned off, and we will use it again when we go forth onto the astral plane, either individually to solve our own personal glamours, if we can begin to detect them, or the wider glamours to which so many are subject. We'll close with the 3 ohms that TK tells us about, or at least he says that every member sounds the ohm, but we can't do that, so we'll close with 3 ohms to confirm the work that is done in this larger realm of Maya, which includes mind, emotions, and etheric physical. And we slowly and faithfully and rhythmically and over the years really continue our subjective work. So thank you for your participation. Tomorrow, we're on the AM schedule now, and tomorrow we have the Invoking of the Soul of Nations broadcast, which Tuija will lead. And then on Sunday, let's see, is this correct, or do we have the full moon coming up? I'll be leading on the 9th, the pre-full moon webinar, and then early morning on the 11th, there is a exact full moon service meditation broadcast. I think we're going as far as to the invocation of money for hierarchical purposes. That would be Sunday. Let's take a look here. Sunday is the 9th, and that's the day that I'm going to be doing the pre-full moon. So we'll have to let you know about that. Either the pre-full moon will be going on, or the attracting of money for hierarchical purposes, and probably both will be going on there. And then it looks like we're, coming up to a bit of a break, but I'll be consulting with Tuija on that, and we'll see how that works. So thanks, everybody. Oh, Tuija, you have your hand up, and maybe you can bring clarity to this. Okay. There you go.
Yes, do you hear me? I don't have my headphones. Do you hear me?
You're good. You're good.
Okay, yes. We are going to have on Sunday the attracting money invocation, and then it's going to come full moon, and then we have meditation on Good Friday, on Easter themes, and basically about Gethsemane experience, and then on Sunday evening, our time, we have the resurrection service, and that's going to be before, from us before the conference, and after conference we have that schedule, what is mentioned there.
Okay, I think we're going to have to send, just a clarification out to everybody, and we'll do that. Because
we will.
Around the time of the full moon with extra broadcasts and so forth, it gets a little bit complicated. But thank you, everybody, for showing up. Appreciate your work. It's got to be ongoing work. And all of our meditation work has to be ongoing work. We have to continue to impress the mind, the consciousness, the ethers, continue to impress so that it has its effect upon the elevation of the human consciousness. Okay, thank you very much, and this will be posted, and as I said, let your friends know. We have these broadcasts and webinars, and they can participate, and they can also go to Makara in case they have not been able to, or you have not been able to, and pick up the work and be able to meditate with us. So many blessings to everybody, lots of love, and we'll see you before long. Okay, bye-bye.